Hey everyone, and welcome back to Conspiracy Theory Declassified. Tonight we're peeling back the layers on one of the most audacious, technically demanding, and top-secret covert operations in history. What if I told you that at the height of the Cold War, the CIA built a ship the size of a skyscraper to steal a nuclear-armed ghost from the bottom of the ocean? And that the cover story for this billion-dollar heist involved one of the most famous and eccentric figures of the 20th century? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Project Azorian. Before we dive into the mystery, if you're as fascinated by the unknown as I am, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us find more stories that deserve to be told. And as we go, drop a comment below with a mystery you think is due for a new look. All right, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin our investigation. The year is 1968. You can feel the tension crackling in the air across the globe. It's a world sliced in two, a geopolitical chessboard where every move is calculated, and the stakes are nothing less than total annihilation. The United States and the Soviet Union stand glaring at each other across an ideological divide, their fingers hovering over the buttons that could end the world. The Vietnam War is a bloody, televised quagmire. Protests are erupting in cities from Paris to Chicago. The Cold War isn't just a metaphor. It's a daily grinding reality of espionage, proxy wars, and a nuclear standoff that has the entire planet holding its breath. And nowhere is this silent war more palpable than in the deep, crushing dark of the world's oceans. Here, beneath the waves, steel sharks packed with city-killing weapons patrol in absolute secrecy, the unseen arbiters of a fragile peace. Your journey tonight begins in this abyss. Picture yourself deep in the North Pacific, somewhere between the Kamchatka Peninsula and Hawaii. You are aboard the Soviet submarine K-129. It's a Gulf II class diesel-electric boat, a workhorse of the Soviet Pacific Fleet. This isn't a sleek, modern, nuclear-powered hunter. It's a machine of a slightly older vintage, which means the air you breathe is thick with the smell of diesel fumes, filtered human sweat, and stale cabbage soup from the galley. The space is claustrophobic, a labyrinth of pipes, valves, and wiring. The constant low hum of the electric motors is your world, a sound that tells you that you are alive and moving. 98 souls are packed into this steel tube, living and working in shifts, running drills, maintaining the delicate machinery that keeps the ocean at bay. You are on a combat patrol. This is the established fact of our story. K-129, under the command of Captain First Rank Vladimir Kobzar, slipped its moorings in late February from the naval base at Petropavlovsk. Its mission is deterrence. Tucked inside its elongated sail are three R-21 ballistic missiles, known to NATO as the SS-N5 Sark. Each one carries a 1-megaton thermonuclear warhead, a weapon powerful enough to incinerate a city, to turn millions of lives into a column of radioactive dust. The men on board understand their purpose. They are a ghost, a promise of apocalyptic retaliation should the homeland ever be attacked. They are a single, vital piece in the grand, terrifying game of mutually assured destruction. On March 8, 1968, something goes terribly wrong. K-129 is scheduled to make a routine radio check-in with Fleet Headquarters. The moment comes and goes. The radio operator at command waits. He listens to the hiss of static, the meaningless chatter of the airwaves, but from the designated coordinates, there is only silence. Hours bleed into a day. Another check-in is missed. Panic, cold and professional, begins to creep into the halls of Soviet Naval Command. A submarine carrying 3 nuclear warheads has vanished. It has become a ghost, not just on the tactical map, but in reality. It has ceased to exist. What happened down there, 3 miles beneath the waves? The official records are sealed or lost. The ship suffered a catastrophic internal event. But what? This leads us to our lesser-known detail, a fringe theory born from the intense paranoia of the era. The common explanations are a hydrogen gas explosion while charging the batteries, a known danger on these subs, or a faulty snorkel valve flooding the boat. Another theory points to a collision with an American submarine, the USS Swordfish, which was operating in the area and reportedly returned to its port in Yokosuka, Japan, with a bent periscope claiming to have hit an iceberg. A strange occurrence in those warmer waters. But a more sinister theory whispers of a mutiny. It suggests that a small cabal of hardline officers on board, disillusioned with the Kremlin's leadership, attempted to take control of the submarine. Their goal? To launch a missile at a specific target, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The idea was to create a false flag attack that would look like it came from China, pushing the US and China into a war and leaving the Soviet Union as the world's sole superpower. In this telling, the launch sequence went horribly wrong, or was sabotaged by loyal crewmen, triggering a massive explosion that tore the submarine apart from the inside. We have no proof, of course. It remains a dark whisper, a potential explanation for the sudden violent end of K-129. The only certainty is the silence that followed. Imagine the scene. One moment, the rhythmic hum of a patrol. The next, a blinding flash, the shriek of tortured metal, and the instantaneous brutal pressure of the Pacific Ocean crashing in. In seconds, the K-129 and its 98 crew members are plummeting through the abyss, a mangled tomb falling through miles of black water to their final resting place on the ocean floor. This brings us to our critical question for tonight. In an era without GPS, without flight recorders or emergency beacons for submarines, how do you even begin to search for a needle in a haystack 3 miles deep, especially when you don't even know where the haystack is? And more importantly, who else might be listening in the dark? The question hangs in the cold, salt-laced air of the command center. Who else is listening? For now, that question is an unknown whisper. Your immediate reality is the unfolding crisis within the Soviet Pacific Fleet. The silence from K-129 is no longer a worry. It's a declaration of catastrophe. A protocol is initiated, a word spoken with grim finality. Poteria, loss. In the highest echelons of the Kremlin, the news lands like a physical blow. It's not just the potential loss of 98 lives, a tragedy in itself, but the loss of control. 3 thermonuclear warheads are now adrift in the geopolitical currents, unaccounted for. A broken arrow. You're now part of the response. A vast, powerful machine grinds into motion. From the sprawling naval bases at Petropavlovsk and Vladivostok, the order goes out. Dozens of ships are diverted from their duties and pointed towards the K-129's last known patrol area. You see destroyers, their sleek gray hulls cutting through the churning waves. You see frigates, spy trawlers bristling with antennae, even converted civilian fishing boats. Anything that can float and carry a search crew is pressed into service. Overhead, the sky fills with the drone of long-range Tupolev Tu-95 Bear bombers and Ilyushin Il-38 maritime patrol aircraft. Their crews are tasked with a grueling, mind-numbing mission: to fly low over thousands of square miles of empty ocean, their eyes scanning for any sign of wreckage, any iridescent sheen of a diesel fuel slick on the water's surface. The scale of this operation is immense, a testament to Soviet military might. This is the established fact. For over 2 months, the Soviet Navy conducted one of the largest and most intensive search and rescue operations in modern history. The search area itself is a logistical nightmare. It's a colossal patch of the North Pacific, a fluid, ever-shifting grid covering thousands of square nautical miles. Finding the K-129 here is not like finding a needle in a haystack. It's like finding a single grain of black sand on a vast, dark beach at night during a storm. The sailors on the search vessels work around the clock. You can feel the biting wind on the deck, the constant roll of the ship. Below deck, sonar technicians sit in darkened rooms, headsets clamped on, listening. They are using active sonar, sending out powerful pings of sound into the depths, hoping for a faint echo, a return signal that suggests something man-made is resting on the seabed. But the ocean does not give up its secrets easily. The pings go out and are swallowed by the immense crushing pressure. The seabed 3 miles down is not a flat, sandy plain. It's a landscape of underwater mountains, canyons, and vast plains of silt that can swallow wreckage whole. The ocean itself is a symphony of noise, the songs of whales, the grinding of tectonic plates, the groans of its own immense weight. To the Soviet sonar operators, the abyss returns only a confusing cacophony. Days turn into weeks. Hope curdles into frustration, then into a grim, exhausting sense of futility. They find nothing, not a single bolt, not a scrap of debris, not one drop of oil. It is as if the submarine and its 98 men simply sailed off the edge of the world. This leads to the lesser-known detail of the search, a critical flaw in their logic. The Soviet command, for all its resources, was trapped by its own doctrine. They operated on the assumption that whatever happened to K-129, it must have occurred near its last confirmed position or along its planned patrol route. Their entire search grid, this massive deployment of ships and planes, was predicated on this belief. They couldn't fathom that a catastrophic event might have occurred hundreds of miles away from where they were looking. They were meticulously, desperately, searching in the wrong place. Their powerful machine was aimed at a ghost, an echo of where the submarine should have been, not where it actually was. They were so focused on their own maps and plans that they failed to consider the unthinkable, that the submarine had gone completely off course before it died. You can sense the desperation escalating in the daily report sent back to Moscow. The tone shifts from confident and systematic to strained and anxious. Imagine the Soviet admirals pushing pins into maps, redrawing search grids, demanding more resources, all while a cold dread settles in their stomachs. They have been beaten, not by an enemy, but by physics, by geography, by the sheer, overwhelming size and depth of the ocean. The might of a superpower has been rendered impotent. Sometime in the third week of April, after more than 60 fruitless days, the order is quietly given to scale back the search. Ships are recalled, planes are grounded. The official designation of K-129 is changed from missing to lost with all hands. For the families of the crew, it's a devastating confirmation of their worst fears. For the Soviet Navy, it is a profound and public humiliation. And so, the vast armada retreats, leaving the Pacific to its gray, indifferent silence. They leave behind their comrades and their nuclear weapons, consigned to an unknown, unmarked grave. This failure raises our critical question. When a nation with one of the most powerful militaries on Earth is forced to admit defeat, to leave its own sailors and its most potent weapons in an unmarked grave, what does that say about the secrets the ocean can keep? And what happens when you realize that while you were screaming into the abyss with sonar, someone else was quietly listening to its dying whisper? While the Soviet fleet churns the surface of the Pacific into a frantic, useless foam, you find yourself transported to a very different scene. You are not on the rolling deck of a warship. You are in a quiet, still, air-conditioned room, deep inside a secure naval facility, perhaps at Adak in the Aleutian Islands or Pacific Beach in Washington State. There are no shouts here, no biting winds. There is only the low hum of electronics and the intense focused silence of men wearing headsets, their eyes fixed on slowly scrolling chart paper and glowing oscilloscopes. These men are not screaming into the abyss. They are listening to it. They are the ears of the United States Navy, and their instrument is one of the most brilliant and closely guarded secrets of the Cold War, the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS. This is our established fact. SOSUS was a deep-water acoustic marvel, a spider's web of highly sensitive hydrophones, underwater microphones, laid directly onto the seabed in strategic locations across the world, oceans. Cabled together and connected to shore-based processing stations, this network was designed for one primary purpose: to detect the sound of Soviet submarines. Every machine makes a noise. A nuclear reactor pump has a specific whine. A propeller cavitating in the water creates a unique hiss. Each class of submarine, and often each individual boat, had its own distinct acoustic signature, as unique as a fingerprint. The job of the analysts you're sitting with was to listen to the ocean's ambient symphony and pick out the discordant notes of enemy vessels, tracking their movements in real time, without ever revealing they were being watched. It was the ultimate passive surveillance system, a ghost network hunting ghosts. In early March of 1968, a sound comes through the network that is unlike any other. It is not the rhythmic thrum of a propeller or the steady hum of machinery. It is something sudden, violent, and terribly final. The men in the listening post sit bolt upright. On their monitors, the sound visualizes as a series of sharp, transient spikes. First, a high-frequency crack, then a chaotic burst of noise, and finally a deep, gut-wrenching rumble as thousands of pounds of water pressure per square inch obliterate a pocket of air. You are hearing the recorded death of the K-129. It's what acousticians call the event, a sound signature composed of multiple catastrophic moments: the initial breach, the shriek of metal tearing, and the final definitive implosion as the submarine's hull collapses under the weight of a 3-mile column of water. The genius of SOSUS wasn't just in hearing this event, but in locating it. The sound of the implosion rippled out through the ocean and struck different hydrophone arrays at minutely different times. By cross-referencing these timestamps, performing a kind of underwater triangulation, the analyst could pinpoint the source of the sound with uncanny precision. While the Soviets were searching a vast barren expanse of ocean hundreds of miles to the northwest, the Americans had a target area plotted on their charts with a radius of less than 5 nautical miles. They knew where the K-129 was, and they knew that their enemy had no clue. Now we delve into the lesser-known detail, a more forensic interpretation of those terrifying sounds. The declassified reports speak of a cataclysmic event, but sources who claim to have seen the raw acoustic data suggest a more complex story. The sound wasn't just one single implosion. It was a sequence. The theory is that the first sound recorded was a sharp, distinct crack that came before the main hull collapse. This initial sound was different, indicative of a smaller, internal explosion. This acoustic clue gives life to the more sinister theories about the submarine's demise. Was that first crack the sound of a torpedo detonating in its tube? Or a missile propellant fire? Or perhaps, as the mutiny theory suggests, a firefight or a deliberate act of sabotage inside the boat that precipitated the final disaster? The SOSUS tapes didn't just provide a location. They may have held a recording of the very crime scene itself, a ghostly audio log of the submarine's last, violent seconds. You are now in the Pentagon, in the hushed offices of naval intelligence. The report lands on the desk. The data is unequivocal. K-129 is down. Here are the coordinates. A map is unrolled. You can see the small, precise circle drawn by the Americans. Then you see the massive, sprawling search area of the Soviets, comical in its distance from the real target. The Americans watch and wait. They track the Soviet ships sailing back and forth, burning millions of gallons of fuel on a fool's errand. They watch as the search is finally abandoned. And then, the silence of the North Pacific returns. But now, it's a different kind of silence. It's the silence of opportunity, an opportunity of almost unimaginable intelligence value. This possession of a secret your adversary doesn't know you have is the ultimate currency of the Cold War. It's a key that can unlock 1,000 doors. The wreck of the K-129 isn't just a tomb, it's a treasure chest. And the United States is the only nation on Earth that holds the map. This brings us to a pivotal, critical question. When you hold a secret that could tip the balance of the Cold War, a secret your enemy doesn't even know you possess, what do you do with it? Do you simply monitor the site? Or does the very existence of such an opportunity compel you to attempt something previously thought impossible? The question of what to do with this explosive secret echoes through the most secure rooms in Washington, D.C. You're no longer listening to the ocean's whispers. You are in a windowless, soundproofed briefing room, deep in the original headquarters building of the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia. The air is cool and still. Around a polished table, a handful of men, the gatekeepers of America's deepest secrets, are looking at a set of coordinates on a map of the Pacific. They are contemplating a heist on a scale so grand, so audacious, that it borders on the insane. Before they can even begin to ask how to do it, they must first fully understand why. They must take inventory of the sunken treasure. The wreck of the K-129, lying in the abyssal dark, is seen not as a maritime tomb but as the ultimate intelligence prize. It's a perfect snapshot of Soviet naval power, a time capsule of their most advanced technology, frozen in March of 1968. If they can retrieve it, or even a part of it, the secrets it could yield would be priceless. So you begin to build the list, the justification for what will become a billion-dollar gamble. First and most obviously are the nuclear weapons. This is the established fact of the intelligence hall. Inside the submarine's sail are 3 R-21 ballistic missiles. To the CIA and the Pentagon, These aren't just weapons. They are complete encyclopedias of Soviet strategic capabilities. Getting their hands on one would allow them to reverse engineer everything. They could analyze the composition of its solid rocket fuel, determining its range and burn rate. They could dissect its guidance system, learning how accurately the Soviets could target American cities. Most importantly, they could examine the nuclear warhead itself, its design, its trigger mechanism, its yield-to-weight ratio. This knowledge wouldn't just be an advantage, it would be a quantum leap in understanding their adversary's offensive power. But in the world of espionage, weapons are only part of the equation. Arguably even more valuable is what lies in the submarine's radio room and command center, the cryptographic hardware and the codebooks. You see, every coded message is a lock. The crypto machine is the key, but the daily or weekly code settings written in the codebooks are the combination. If you could recover those books, you would possess the ability to unlock and read the Soviet Pacific Fleet's secret communications, possibly for months or even years, until the codes were inevitably changed. You could listen in on their ship movements, their operational orders, their intelligence reports. It would be like placing a bug in the Soviet Navy's command center. The strategic advantage would be immeasurable. The list grows. The submarine's sonar system housed in its bow is a black box of Soviet acoustic technology. How sensitive is it? What frequencies does it use? How well can it distinguish an American submarine from a blue whale? Recovering that sonar dome would allow the U.S. Navy to develop new tactics and technologies to defeat it, to become even quieter, even more invisible in the underwater war. Then there are the torpedoes in the forward torpedo room. Not just their guidance systems and explosive power, but the design of their acoustic seekers. Knowing how a Soviet torpedo hunts would be the key to designing decoys to fool it. Even the very hull of the submarine is an intelligence target. What kind of high-tensile steel did they use? What were their welding techniques? Analyzing the metallurgy would reveal the K-129's maximum operational depth and its acoustic properties, helping American submariners know precisely how deep their enemies could dive and how they sounded while doing it. This brings us to a lesser-known detail, a more speculative but tantalizing prize. Some intelligence analysts theorized that the K-129 wasn't on a standard patrol. They believed it was testing a new experimental piece of equipment, a towed sonar array. This would have been a long cable, hundreds of feet long, embedded with hydrophones, trailed behind the submarine. Such a system could provide a much greater field of acoustic vision. If this experimental array was still attached to the wreckage recovering, it wouldn't just reveal existing Soviet technology. It would expose a secret research and development program, giving the U.S. a glimpse into the future of Soviet anti-submarine warfare. It was a potential bonus prize that made the gamble even more tempting. You are now the CIA director, making the case to the president. You lay out this incredible inventory. Any single item on this list, a missile, a codebook, a sonar array, would be the intelligence coup of the decade. To get all of it at once, from a single source, is an opportunity that will never come again. The risks you concede are astronomical. This is an operation in a hostile environment 3 miles deep, far beyond any previous salvage effort. If you are discovered, it could trigger a diplomatic crisis or worse. But the potential reward is total information dominance in the undersea domain. This forces the ultimate critical question upon the men in that room. When the potential reward is a complete schematic of your enemy's mind and machinery, does any risk become acceptable? How do you calculate the odds on a mission that has never been attempted, where every piece of equipment has to be invented from scratch, and where failure means not just embarrassment but a potential spark for World War III? The debate is over. You are in the room where the final decision is made. The potential intelligence haul is simply too great to ignore. The risks, while monumental, are calculated and ultimately accepted. The United States will attempt the impossible. It will go 3 miles down into the abyss and steal a Soviet submarine. The mission is given a code name, Project Azorian. For decades, the world would mistakenly call it Project Jennifer. But you now know Jennifer was merely the name of the security file, the top-secret compartment used to fence off this secret from the rest of the intelligence world. Azorian was the mission, the plan to raise the dead from the ocean floor. With the decision made, A small insulated team of the best minds from the CIA and the private sector is assembled. Their task is to turn this audacious concept into a workable engineering blueprint. You are with them as they sketch out the fundamentals on a chalkboard. The plan that emerges is elegant in its core concept and breathtaking in its complexity. This is the established fact of the recovery method. They would construct a massive purpose-built ship. This ship would sail to the precise coordinates provided by the SOSUS network and hold its position with perfect stability. Then, the floor in the center of the ship's hull would open up, revealing a huge interior bay, a moon pool, shielded from spy satellites and prying eyes. Through this moon pool, they would lower a colossal capture vehicle, a giant mechanical claw attached to a pipe string, section by section, for 16,500 feet. The claw would grab the targeted section of the K-129, and the ship's massive derrick would slowly, painstakingly, lift the entire prize up through the water column and into the hidden belly of the ship. The moon pool doors would close and the ship would sail home with its stolen ghost. It sounds like science fiction, and in 1969, it essentially was. Every single element of this plan existed at the very edge of known technology, or far beyond it. Consider the challenges. The ship itself had to be a leviathan, over 600 feet long and displacing more than 60,000 tons, to handle the immense weight and to provide a stable platform in the notoriously rough seas of the North Pacific. It needed a revolutionary dynamic positioning system, a series of powerful thrusters on its hull, all computer-controlled, that could hold the vessel perfectly stationary over a 0.3 miles below for weeks on end, counteracting wind and currents. Then, there was the lift pipe. A steel cable of that length would snap under its own weight, long before you even attached a multi-thousand-ton submarine to it. They needed a rigid, segmented pipe string, much like those used for offshore oil drilling, but stronger and more complex than any ever forged. Each 60-foot section of pipe had to be lifted by the ship's derrick, meticulously threaded onto the one below it, and lowered, one piece at a time. The sheer weight of this 3-mile-long steel string would be immense, and the precision required to assemble it in rolling seas was a nightmare. And at the end of that string was the grapple, the claw. You couldn't just use a simple hook. The submarine's hull, corroded after years in salt water, was likely as fragile as an eggshell. The capture vehicle had to be a masterpiece of heavy robotics, a multi-fingered cage designed to gently cradle the wreckage, distributing the load to prevent it from crumbling into a cloud of rust and debris. As the engineers wrestled with these monumental problems, they explored every conceivable alternative. This leads us to our lesser-known detail, the bizarre concepts that were considered and rejected. In the initial brainstorming sessions, some truly wild ideas were floated. One proposal involved using deep-sea submersibles like the bathyscaphe Trieste to attach a series of enormous inflatable pontoons or flotation bags to the K-129's hull. These would then be filled with a buoyant gas or liquid, lifting the submarine from the seabed. Another idea was to try and pump the entire wreckage full of a buoyant substance like syntactic foam, turning the sub into its own life raft. These ideas were ultimately discarded. They were deemed too clumsy, too unpredictable, and far too difficult to conceal. An armada of support ships and submersibles or a giant submarine suddenly rocketing to the surface was impossible to hide. The mechanical lift, for all its terrifying complexity, offered one thing the others did not: control and the possibility of concealment. The entire operation was to be shrouded in a level of secrecy that was absolute. The project was designated Black. The engineers, contractors, and technicians involved were walled off from each other. The team designing the ship's hull wouldn't know the specifics of the lifting derrick. The people building the giant claw would be told it was for deep-sea mining. No single person, outside of the small core group at the CIA, would have the full picture. They were building a puzzle, and each contractor would only be given their one piece. The blueprint is now complete, a testament to human ingenuity and Cold War ambition. The technical challenges, while vast, are deemed solvable. The secrecy, while difficult, is considered manageable. But a plan of this magnitude leaves a huge footprint. It requires a shipyard, steel mills, and hundreds of millions of dollars. It requires a physical ship that people will see. This brings you to the final and perhaps most crucial piece of the puzzle and our next critical question. You have a plan to build a ghost ship for a phantom purpose, but how do you hide a 63,000-ton secret in plain sight? How do you create a cover story so audacious, so strange, and yet so believable that the entire world, including Soviet spy satellites, will look right at it and see nothing at all? You have the blueprint for the impossible machine, but a blueprint is not a ship. The single biggest problem remains: hiding the construction and operation of a 63,000-ton vessel whose every feature screams covert operation. What plausible commercial enterprise requires a gigantic, technologically advanced ship to park in the middle of nowhere for weeks on end, dangling a mysterious object on a 3-mile-long pipe? The list of legitimate answers is practically non-existent. Deep-sea oil drilling? The technology for that depth was decades away, and geological surveys showed no oil there. Scientific research? No academic institution had a budget that could support such a vessel. High-sea salvage? There were no known wrecks at those coordinates worth recovering. You're back in the CIA planning room, and the cover story is now the most critical piece of the puzzle. It has to be audacious enough to explain the bizarre ship, yet believable enough not to attract undue attention from Soviet intelligence. Then, someone lands on the perfect idea: deep-sea mining. In the late 1960s, you see, the scientific community had confirmed that vast plains of the deep ocean floor, particularly in the Pacific, were littered with billions of potato-sized rocks called manganese nodules. These polymetallic nodules were rich in valuable industrial metals: manganese, nickel, copper, cobalt. At the time, mining them was a theoretical frontier, a futuristic solution to the world's dwindling mineral resources. No one had actually done it commercially. The technical challenges were considered almost insurmountable, and that was precisely what made it the perfect cover. The story fits every strange requirement of the mission. It perfectly explains why a massive ship is needed for stability and processing. It justifies the giant derrick and the long pipe string to lower a collection device to the seabed. It provides a logical reason for the moon pool, a way to bring the harvested nodules into the ship without capsizing it in rough seas. It even explains the chosen location in the Pacific. It was a cover story so technically ambitious that it was almost unbelievable, which paradoxically made it the most believable story of all. But the CIA couldn't just create a fake mining company. A brand new entity with a $500 million budget would be an immediate red flag. The US Navy couldn't do it. That would be an act of war. They needed a commercial partner, a frontman so famous, so wealthy, and so famously eccentric that when he announced he was going to spend a fortune on a futuristic moonshot project, the world would just nod and say, "That sounds about right." There was only one man on the planet who fit that description. This is our established fact. The CIA turned to the reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes. By the early 1970s, Hughes was more myth than man. The visionary aviator, the daring film producer, the brilliant defense contractor had retreated from the world. He was now a ghost, living in a sealed-off penthouse suite in Las Vegas, pathologically terrified of germs with his long hair and fingernails, communicating only through a tiny circle of trusted aides. But his companies, particularly Hughes Tool Company, had a long history of doing classified work for the US government. Hughes was a known patriot, a fierce anti-communist, and a man who understood the value of secrecy. More importantly, his reputation for grandiose, borderline crazy projects was the perfect camouflage. If General Motors or Exxon announced this venture, Wall Street would laugh and the KGB would get suspicious. But Howard Hughes, the man who spent a fortune building the Spruce Goose, the largest wooden airplane ever constructed that flew only once, a quixotic quest to mine the bottom of the ocean, was perfectly in character. He was, in effect, a human cloaking device. The CIA approached Hughes's inner circle, and a deal was struck. But what truly motivated Hughes to participate? This leads to our lesser-known detail. While the arrangement was a formal, top-secret contract, some insiders believe Hughes's motivation went beyond patriotism or profit. Hughes, even in his seclusion, was still a brilliant engineer and a man obsessed with pushing the boundaries of technology. The CIA didn't just sell him on the mission's importance, they sold him on its audacity. They presented it as the greatest engineering challenge of the century, the ultimate secret, For a man who could no longer fly planes or build revolutionary aircraft himself, this was a chance to be part of the grandest adventure on Earth, all from the privacy of his sanitized penthouse. He wasn't just providing a cover. You see him becoming an enthusiastic, albeit invisible, conspirator, captivated by the sheer, magnificent insanity of the plan. And so, the public deception began. In 1972, Hughes' Summa Corporation put out a carefully crafted press release. It announced that Howard Hughes was embarking on his most ambitious project yet, the construction of a revolutionary vessel, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, which would begin commercially mining manganese nodules from the Pacific seabed. The press ran with the story, hailing it as another bold stroke from a reclusive genius. Industry experts debated its economic viability. The Soviets, you can imagine, took note, filed it away as another example of a capitalist's extravagant folly, and paid it no special attention. The bait had been taken. The world was looking one way, while the CIA prepared to move the other. The cover is now set in stone, a masterpiece of misdirection built on the reputation of a single strange man. But a story is not a ship. Now comes the hard part. This brings us to our critical question. With the perfect cover story in place, you've solved the problem of perception. But now you have to actually build the impossible machine. What does a ship designed to commit the perfect crime look like? And how do you construct a tool of espionage on this scale, while hiding its true purpose from the very people building it? The cover story, as brilliant as it is still just a story. Now you have to build the lie, forge it in steel, and float it on the ocean. Your journey takes you to the gritty waterfront of Chester, Pennsylvania, to the Sun Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company. It's 1971, and the yard is buzzing with a new strange project designated Hull NAR 680. The welders, the electricians, the engineers, they've been told they are building the most advanced deep-sea mining vessel in the world, a flagship for Howard Hughes' audacious new venture. Secrecy is woven into the very fabric of the construction process. Blueprints are compartmentalized. The team fabricating the massive retractable doors for the ship's bottom has no contact with the team designing the heavy lift derrick. It's a puzzle being built by hundreds of hands, none of whom can see the picture on the box. The vessel that begins to take shape on the slipway is a true leviathan, a ship of paradoxes. Officially christened the Hughes Glomar Explorer, it is a masterpiece of dual-purpose engineering. This is our established fact. Every one of its revolutionary features served both the public cover story and the secret mission. You see its immense size first. At 619 feet long and 116 feet wide, it's larger than any drill ship of its day. The public explanation is that this size is necessary for stability during deep ocean mining operations. The secret reality is that it needs to be a massive, stable platform to lift the dead weight of a waterlogged submarine section, weighing millions of pounds without capsizing. Then you notice the derrick rising like a skyscraper from the ship's center. For the cover story, it's there to handle the thousands of sections of pipe for the mining collector. But you can see it's no ordinary crane. It's a gimbaled derrick. This meant the entire structure was mounted on a set of massive hydraulic shock absorbers. While the ship rolled and pitched in the Pacific swells, the gimbal system would ensure the derrick and the 3-mile-long pipe string hanging from it remained almost perfectly vertical. This was crucial for the delicate operation of grabbing the submarine. Below the derrick, you find the ship's greatest secret, the moon pool. To the outside world, this was a large, covered central opening in the hull, allowing the mining equipment to be brought up into the ship for maintenance, protected from the weather. But you see it for what it truly is: a clandestine hangar, 200 feet long and 74 feet wide. Giant sliding doors on the bottom of the hull could open to the sea, allowing the prize to be lifted completely inside the ship, hidden from spy satellites, from reconnaissance planes, from any curious fishing trawlers that might pass by. It was a floating Trojan horse. To keep this horse perfectly still over its target, the ship was fitted with a revolutionary dynamic positioning system. Using acoustic beacons dropped to the seafloor as a reference, an onboard computer controlled a series of powerful thrusters in the bow and stern, automatically countering the forces of wind and current. For the mining story, this meant efficiency. For Project Azorian, it meant the ability to hover with pinpoint precision over the K-129 for the weeks it would take to conduct the lift. This ship was an enigma, It looked something like an oil exploration vessel, but it was bigger, stranger, and far more technologically advanced. It was a ship built with surgical precision for a single secret purpose. And as this Leviathan was being built, rumors about its hidden capabilities began to circulate. This is our lesser-known detail. Beyond the publicly known features, the Glomar Explorer was rumored to be a full-fledged CIA forward operating base. Speculation among those on the fringes of the intelligence community suggested it was equipped with the most advanced secure communications gear, allowing for encrypted real-time satellite uplinks to Langley. Some theories claimed it had a sophisticated electronic warfare suite, capable of jamming Soviet surveillance systems. The most tantalizing theory was that deep within its hull, the area designated as the ship's infirmary was actually a state-of-the-art forensic laboratory, staffed by CIA technicians ready to immediately begin analyzing the recovered submarine, its weapons and its documents the moment it was brought on board. It wasn't just a heavy-lift vessel, it was a floating intelligence factory. In November 1972, the Hughes Glomar Explorer slides down the slipway into the Delaware River. It is a public event, a spectacle of American ingenuity. News reports celebrate Howard Hughes's vision. Maritime experts marvel at the ship's unique design. The deception is holding perfectly. The Leviathan is born, and its true purpose remains a ghost in the machine. The ship, the perfect stage for this impossible operation, is now a reality. But a stage is useless without its main actor. This leads us to our next, most critical engineering challenge, and our critical question. You've built the perfect platform for this impossible heist. But what about the tool that will do the actual stealing? How do you engineer a mechanical hand, large enough and strong enough to pluck a decaying multi-million-pound submarine from the seabed, yet gentle enough not to crush it into dust? You have the ship, a 63,000-ton stage for the ultimate covert operation. But now you need the star performer, the tool that will reach into the abyss and perform the actual heist. You find yourself with the engineers at Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works division in California, the same secretive group that developed the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird. Their task now is not to conquer the sky, but the deep sea. The problem they face is almost philosophical. How do you grasp a ghost? The wreckage of the K-129 is not a solid steel ingot. It's a mangled, imploded tube of metal, weakened by a catastrophic event and corroded by years under the immense pressure of 16,500 feet of water. If you grab it too hard, it will disintegrate. If you don't grab it firmly enough, it will slip away and be lost forever. Their solution is an engineering marvel of breathtaking scale and complexity. It was officially called the capture vehicle, but the engineers, with a touch of the gallows humor common to such high-stakes projects, gave it a nickname, Clementine. The name was a nod to the old folk song, "Oh My Darlin' Clementine," in which a miner's daughter is lost and gone forever. It was a fitting, if morbid, moniker for a machine designed to retrieve something lost in the eternal darkness. This is our established fact. Clementine was not a claw in the conventional sense. You need to picture something far larger and more intricate. Imagine a steel structure the size of a 4-story building. It was not designed to pinch or grab, but to cradle. The main body was a massive rectangular frame. Instead of fingers, it had a series of colossal, hydraulically powered tines or gates. These were designed to close together underneath the submarine, forming a massive interlocking steel basket. To ensure stability on the soft, silty seabed, Clementine was equipped with large, extendable legs, like the outriggers on a crane, which would plant themselves firmly on the ocean floor before the capture was attempted. This mechanical beast was also the eyes of the operation. It was studded with an array of powerful pressure-proof deep-sea lights to pierce the absolute blackness of the abyss, and a suite of television cameras that would feed live images up a 3-mile-long cable to the control room of the Glomar Explorer. It even had its own active sonar system to aid in the final, delicate maneuvers as it was lowered over the target. This was no simple hook on a rope. It was one of the largest and most sophisticated remote-controlled robots ever built, a puppet of immense size and strength, whose strings stretched up through miles of dark water to the hands of the operators on the surface. You can envision the operational plan. You are in the control room of the Glomar Explorer, watching the ghostly, black and white images on the video monitors. You see Clementine descend, a metal phantom in the cone of its own lights. The operators, using joystick controls, guide it to straddle the wreckage of the K-129. The outrigger legs deploy, anchoring the vehicle. Then, with agonizing slowness, the hydraulic gates begin to close, not grabbing the sub, but sliding through the mud beneath it, gently scooping it, supporting its fragile hull from below. The official designs for Clementine are a testament to brilliant heavy engineering. But this leads us to a lesser-known detail, a theory about its unacknowledged capabilities. Was Clementine just a cradle, or was it also a surgical tool? The theory suggests that the capture vehicle was equipped with a suite of classified secondary tools for contingency operations. Think of small, high-powered manipulator arms equipped with drills or cutting torches, folded away within the main structure. If the main lift of the entire submarine section proved impossible, could these arms have been deployed for a more targeted extraction? Could they have been used to cut through the hull to retrieve a single high-value item, like the crypto machine or a specific codebook? This theory posits that the CIA had a fallback plan. Clementine wasn't just built for the grand prize. It may have been designed to ensure that no matter what happened, they wouldn't come home empty-handed. Clementine is a marvel, the key to the entire operation. This colossal, hyper-advanced tool is ready, but its very size presents a new logistical nightmare. You can't very well bolt a 4-story tall secret weapon to the deck of your ship in a public shipyard. It has to be built in secret, transported in secret, and attached to the Glomar Explorer in secret. This raises our next critical question. You've designed a mechanical claw the size of a building, a tool of espionage so large it can't possibly be hidden. How do you transport this behemoth to the middle of the Pacific and attach it to your spy ship without the whole world, and especially the Soviets, watching you do it? The problem of Clementine, the 4-story mechanical hand of your secret mission, is a problem of logistics and concealment. You have built it in secret at Lockheed's facilities in California. You have built its mothership, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, on the opposite side of the country in Pennsylvania. The two must be brought together, but you cannot perform this delicate marriage in any public port. Lifting a mysterious building-sized claw and lowering it into the belly of an equally mysterious ship is a spectacle that would guarantee a front-page story in every newspaper and a high-priority alert in the Kremlin. The transfer, like the mission itself, must happen in the shadows. It must happen underwater. To solve this puzzle, the CIA commissions yet another entirely unique, purpose-built piece of hardware. It's not as grand as the Glomar Explorer or as complex as Clementine, but it is just as crucial to the deception. You are now standing on a dock in Redwood City, California, looking at the Hughes mining barge, or HMB-1. To a casual observer, it's just a very large, rather ugly covered barge, 324 feet long, with a featureless, hangar-like roof. It looks like it could be used for transporting oversized industrial equipment, and that is exactly what it wants you to think. But this is our established fact. The HMB-1 was a submersible vessel, a floating, convertible dry dock. Its real genius was its ability to flood its massive ballast tanks and sink itself beneath the waves, leaving only the top of its hangar walls and a small control tower above the surface. It was a Trojan horse designed to operate in reverse, hiding its contents by disappearing beneath them. Its role was to choreograph an underwater ballet of immense precision and secrecy. You can now visualize the process, a sequence of silent, heavy maneuvers. First, under the cover of darkness, Clementine is loaded into the HMB-1's cavernous interior, and its retractable roof is sealed. The barge is then towed out of the bay, looking for all the world like a mundane piece of industrial shipping. Its destination is a quiet, deep-water cove off the coast of Southern California's Catalina Island. Here it rendezvous with the newly arrived Hughes Glomar Explorer. This is where the magic happens. With the Glomar Explorer moored in position, the HMB-1 begins to flood its tanks. It sinks slowly, deliberately, submerging itself directly beneath the massive exploration vessel. Once the barge is underwater, the Glomar Explorer opens its own massive moon pool doors, the floor of its secret hangar opening to the sea. Now, directly below the moon pool, is the open top of the submerged HMB-1, with Clementine resting inside. Using the powerful precision cranes hidden within its derrick, the Glomar explorer can now reach down, latch onto Clementine, and lift it up out of the barge and into its own moon pool. The entire transfer of the mission's most critical tool happens completely out of sight, in the silent green depths of the Pacific. Once Clementine is secured inside, the Glomar's moon pool doors close, the HMB-1 pumps its ballast tank's dry surfaces and is towed away. The handoff is complete. But the HMB-1's mission was twofold. It was designed not only to deliver the claw, but also to receive the prize. After the recovery in the mid-Pacific, the Glomar explorer would not risk sailing into a U.S. port with a stolen Soviet submarine in its belly. Instead, it would once again meet the HMB-1 at sea, and the underwater ballet would be performed in reverse. The captured section of the K-129, along with Clementine, would be lowered back into the submerged barge. The HMB-1 would then surface, close its roof, and discreetly transport the priceless intelligence haul to a secure location for analysis. This incredible vessel was a masterpiece of concealment, but was it just an empty container? This is our lesser-known detail. The theory is that the HMB-1 was more than just a transport. You can imagine that once the Soviet prize was sealed inside, the barge itself became the first stage of the intelligence exploitation process. It's theorized that the HMB-1 was equipped as a mobile workshop and preliminary analysis lab. This would allow CIA technicians to immediately begin their work in a secure, shielded environment, disarming any remaining ordnance like nuclear torpedoes, stabilizing sensitive materials, and conducting an initial triage of the contents, all while the barge was being innocuously towed back to port. It wasn't just a garage, it was a secret floating laboratory, the first link in a long chain of analysis. The entire system is now in place: the ship, the claw, and the submersible garage. It is the most sophisticated and expensive burglary kit ever assembled. The hardware for the impossible mission is real. This brings us to a stark realization about the sheer scale of this undertaking, and to our next critical question. With the ship, the claw, and the submersible garage, the CIA has assembled the most expensive and sophisticated burglary kit in history. But what is the true cost of such an enterprise, not just in dollars, but in the constant crushing pressure of maintaining absolute secrecy against a backdrop of global suspicion? What happens when the slightest mistake could expose the entire operation before it even begins? The complete toolkit for the world's deepest and most secret heist now exists. The Hughes Glomar Explorer, Clementine, and the HMB-1 are tangible, floating realities. But as you stand back and look at what has been assembled, you are forced to confront the true, staggering cost of this audacious plan. A cost measured not just in money, but in a constant grinding battle against logistics time and the ever-present threat of discovery. Let's begin with the money. This is our established fact. The official budget for Project Azorian was approximately $350 million in the currency of the early 1970s. To understand what that means, you have to let the number expand in your mind to its modern equivalent. Today, that is over $2.1 billion. This wasn't just an expensive project. It was a black hole for cash, a secret on par with the budget of a NASA Apollo mission or the cost of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. You can see where it all went. The design and construction of the Glomar Explorer, a vessel more technologically advanced than almost any other ship afloat, consumed the largest chunk. Then there was the research, development, and fabrication of Clementine and the HMB-1, both unique prototypes that had to be invented from scratch. Add to that the operational costs, years of salaries for hundreds of highly specialized crew members, the fuel to push a 63,000-ton ship across the Pacific, and the intricate web of security and counterintelligence needed to protect the secret. Even the cover story itself cost a fortune, requiring real investments in geological surveys and the hiring of mining experts to make the Hughes venture appear legitimate. This colossal budget supported a logistical operation of breathtaking complexity. You are now a CIA project manager for Azorian, and your life is a high-wire act. Your primary challenge is people. You need to recruit hundreds of individuals. Elite engineers from Lockheed-hardened oil rig roughnecks to handle the pipe-string ex-Navy submariners with an understanding of the deep ocean, and a quiet cadre of CIA case officers to oversee it all. You must vet every single one of them, digging deep into their lives to ensure they are skilled, stable, and above all, trustworthy. And you cannot tell any of them the true nature of their mission. As far as they know, they're on the adventure of a lifetime with Howard Hughes, pioneers in the new frontier of deep-sea mining. Your supply chain is a constant source of anxiety. You are sourcing exotic, high-strength steel alloys for the pipe string, advanced robotics for Clementine's hydraulics, and cutting-edge computers for the ship's positioning system. Each component comes from a different contractor, and each contractor must be fed a plausible story. Their piece of the puzzle carefully isolated from all the others. The paper trail for every bolt and every circuit board must lead back to a legitimate global marine purchase order, never to a CIA expense account in Langley. A single misplaced invoice or a curious shipping clerk could unravel the entire deception. This immense pressure to maintain secrecy leads us to a lesser-known detail: the psychological toll on the people involved. The official history of Azorian is one of a cool, detached professionalism, but you can imagine the reality for a crew member living on the Glomar Explorer. You've been hired for a mining job, but the work is strange. You're surrounded by quiet, watchful company men who deflect personal questions and speak in code. The drills you run seem more complex than necessary for just scooping up rocks. The theory is that the ship was a pressure cooker of paranoia. The CIA wasn't just concerned with Soviet spies. They were conducting constant counterintelligence operations on their own crew. You can sense the feeling of being watched, the subtle tests of loyalty, the knowledge that a loose word in a letter home could have serious consequences. The need-to-know compartmentalization, so vital for security, would have fostered an atmosphere of isolation and suspicion. Every man was on his own, a cog in a machine whose purpose he could only guess at. You feel the project clock ticking. The timeline has stretched. The costs are ballooning. Back in Washington, the Watergate scandal is exploding, putting the CIA and its secret budgets under a microscope of unprecedented intensity. There is a palpable fear that their political cover could evaporate at any moment. Meanwhile, the ghost of the K-129 is not getting any younger. The longer it sits on the seabed, the more it corrodes, making the already delicate lift even more precarious. The pressure to go is immense. All the money has been spent. The logistical labyrinth has been navigated. The crews have been trained in their false purpose. The greatest burglary kit in history is finally ready. This brings the entire multi-year endeavor to the brink of its ultimate test and raises our final pivotal critical question before the mission begins. After years of planning, billions of dollars spent, and with the entire apparatus of deception in place, you finally have the tools to attempt the impossible. But as you sail toward the target, what happens when your adversary decides to show up and watch your every move? How do you maintain the world's most elaborate lie when the very people you're trying to deceive are staring right at you? The years of planning are over. The billions of dollars have been spent. The intricate dance of logistics and deception has reached its final movement. It is June 20th, 1974. You are standing on the bridge of the Hughes Glomar Explorer as it slips its moorings in Long Beach, California, and points its bow towards the immense empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean. A palpable sense of finality hangs in the salt-tinged air. There is no turning back. Clementine, the secret heart of the mission, is secured in its hangar-like moon pool. The crew of nearly 200 men, a carefully curated mix of oil rig roughnecks, marine engineers, and tight-lipped CIA officers, has been given its final briefing on the deep-sea mining expedition. The world's most sophisticated lie is now underway. Your destination is a single, lonely point on the map designated Target Site Azorian, a place in the middle of nowhere, roughly 1,500 nautical miles northwest of Hawaii. This is our established fact. For weeks, the ship is your entire world, a tiny, self-contained universe of steel against an endless backdrop of blue water and sky. You feel the profound isolation. Out here, there is no help if something goes catastrophically wrong. But this same isolation is your shield, the key to the mission's secrecy. A routine settles over the ship. The cover story is meticulously rehearsed. The drilling crew, who believe they are miners, run drills handling the 60-foot sections of pipe. The CIA analysts, posing as geologists, pore over their seabed charts. And the company men, the CIA security officers, watch everything and everyone, their presence a constant, low-humming reminder that this is no ordinary voyage. But even in this vast emptiness, you are never truly alone. The threat of discovery is a constant companion. You are acutely aware of the orbital mechanics of Soviet spy satellites. Every few hours, a Cosmos satellite will pass overhead, its cameras and electronic sensors scrutinizing the ocean below. Every activity on the deck of the Glomar Explorer must be consistent with the mining cover story. Nothing can be left out of place, no unexplained shapes, no unusual procedures. The ship itself is a stage, and the crew are actors performing for an unseen orbital audience. And then there is the more immediate threat, the possibility of a Soviet AGI, an intelligence-gathering trawler, appearing over the horizon at any moment. These ships were the hounds of the Soviet Navy, notorious for shadowing American naval forces, and a vessel as unique as the Glomar would be a target of immense curiosity. This general anxiety is sharpened by a specific nagging fear. This is our lesser-known detail. The theory is that the CIA possessed intelligence suggesting the Soviets were already mildly suspicious of Howard Hughes' maritime activities, perhaps related to other classified naval projects his companies were involved in. This meant that the Glomar Explorer may have set sail under a brighter spotlight than they had hoped. You can imagine the tension in the ship's intelligence center, a belief, bordering on paranoia, that they were being actively hunted from the moment they left port. You hear whispers of a near miss during the transit, an unidentified sonar contact that appeared and then vanished, or a Soviet Tu-95 Bear reconnaissance plane on a long-range patrol flying much closer to their course than normal. Was it a coincidence? Or was it a sign that the cover story was already fraying at the edges? Every unidentified radar blip, every distant aircraft, becomes a potential prelude to disaster. After weeks at sea on the 4th of July, you arrive. The thrum of the main engines dies down and a new sound takes over, the hum and churn of the dynamic positioning thrusters. The ship with uncanny precision ceases its forward motion and becomes a fixed point in the ocean. You are now hovering. Directly below you, through 6,500 feet of black, crushing water, lies the tomb of the K-129. The mood on board shifts. The long, monotonous voyage is over. The performance is about to begin. The crew prepares to deploy the acoustic transponders to the seabed that will guide the ship's positioning system, the first tangible step of the operation. The silence of the abyss is about to be broken. You have navigated the most secret ship in the world to its clandestine destination. The stage is perfectly set in the loneliest theater on Earth. This brings you to the precipice of the unknown, and to our next critical question. You've successfully sailed to your destination undetected, but this is not a laboratory. It's the real world. What unforeseen challenges, what ghosts of the deep, are waiting for you in the crushing darkness 3 miles below? And how long will it be before your quiet, lonely vigil is interrupted? Your lonely vigil at target site Azorian does not last long. The illusion of isolation is shattered just a few days into the operation. On the deck of the Glomar Explorer, the work has begun. It's a slow, loud, and methodical process. You watch as the massive derrick lifts a 60-foot section of high-strength steel pipe, swings it over the opening of the moon pool, and lowers it to the rig floor. There, a team of roughnecks, true to their cover as deep-sea miners, expertly guide it, thread it onto the growing pipe string, and then the entire assembly is lowered another 60 feet into the ocean. The noise is immense, a constant industrial clang of steel on steel, the groan of machinery, the shouts of the crew. It's a perfect performance, a symphony of legitimate industrial activity. This process will go on for days, a vertical assembly line descending into the abyss. Then, you're on the bridge when the call comes from the lookout. Ship on the horizon. All eyes turn. On the radar, a small blip is steadily approaching. Tension, sharp and cold, cuts through the humid air. Who is it? A stray cargo ship? A fishing vessel? As it draws closer, its silhouette becomes unmistakable. The high bow, the array of antennas, the gray paint. It's a Soviet ship. The uninvited guests have arrived. This is our established fact. The CIA's operation was indeed watched closely by the Soviet Navy. The first vessel to arrive was reportedly a Soviet salvage tug, the SB-10, followed later by a more formidable warship. You watch as the Soviet ship slows, taking up a station a few thousand yards away. It begins a slow, lazy circle of the Glomar explorer. You can see the crew on its deck, watching you through powerful binoculars. You can see the telephoto lenses of cameras trained on your vessel. The cat-and-mouse game has begun. On the Glomar's deck, the performance must now be flawless. The crew has been briefed. They continue their work, feigning indifference to their new audience. Some of them even offer a casual wave to the silent observers. Below decks, in the secure intelligence section, CIA officers are hunched over receivers, monitoring every squeak of Soviet radio traffic, desperate to learn what the watchers are reporting back to Fleet Command. Days pass, and the Soviet ship becomes a constant, unnerving presence. It is a gray ghost on the horizon at sunrise, and a cluster of lights in the blackness of night. The psychological pressure is immense. The Soviets, not content to just watch, begin to probe. They send polite but pointed radio messages. American vessel Hughes Glomar Explorer, what is the nature of your operation? The ship's captain, a seasoned veteran chosen for his calm demeanor, responds with the well-rehearsed lines from his script. We are conducting deep-sea mining exploration for the Suma Corporation. The questions continue, testing for inconsistencies, looking for a crack in the facade. This leads to a lesser-known detail, a theory about more aggressive Soviet tactics. The Soviets, frustrated by the stonewalling, may have escalated from passive observation to active harassment. It is rumored that they dispatched helicopters from a nearby cruiser to buzz the Glomar Explorer, flying low and slow, passes their rotors beating the air trying to get a clearer look into the moon pool area and to intimidate the crew. An even more provocative theory suggests the Soviets may have attempted to use their own sonar, sending active pings toward the Glomar Explorer to try and get a return signal from the massive object, Clementine, and its eventual prize, being manipulated beneath the hull. This would have been a dangerous electronic interrogation, a direct challenge to the secrecy of the mission. For the crew, every moment is a test of nerve, a performance for the most skeptical audience imaginable. You are one of the CIA officers on board, and your job is to hold the line. You walk the decks, observing your own crew as much as the Soviets, ensuring the mask of legitimacy never slips. The loud, repetitive, and genuinely difficult work of handling the pipe string is your greatest asset. The industrial noise provides the perfect cover, a constant, plausible clatter that could hide any number of more subtle, secret sounds from below. The Soviets are watching a brilliant piece of theater, a convincing portrayal of a commercial enterprise, but the real show, the main event, is happening in a place they cannot see. The lie is holding. The performance is convincing. But the tension is stretched taut. With the ever-present gaze of the Soviet Navy fixed on your every move on the surface, the true challenge remains in the silent darkness below. This brings you to the heart of the operation, and our next critical question. When you are engaged in a high-stakes performance for a suspicious audience on the surface, how do you manage the even more delicate and dangerous operation happening in the unseen depths below? With the Soviets watching your hands, how do you pull off the magic trick in the dark? While the tense diplomatic theater plays out on the sunlit surface of the Pacific, the real mission descends into a world of absolute darkness and crushing pressure. You leave the noisy, open deck of the Glomar Explorer and enter the cool, quiet confines of the ship's control room. This is the mission's nerve center. It is a world away from the industrial clangor outside. Here, the only sounds are the soft hum of electronics and the hushed, focused voices of the operators. Banks of monitors glow in the dim light, displaying columns of data, strain gauges, hydraulic pressures, sonar readings, and the all-important video feed from the abyss. The command is given. The moon pool doors are open to the sea below. The final pipe section is locked into place, and Clementine, the building-sized capture vehicle, is now suspended at the end of a 3-mile-long steel thread. The descent begins. This is our established fact. The process of lowering the capture vehicle was an agonizingly slow, multi-day operation. It was not a simple drop. It was a painstaking joint-by-joint assembly in reverse. Inch by inch, Clementine is lowered into the Pacific. You watch on the monitors as it slips beneath the waves. The bright sunlit water of the surface quickly gives way to a deepening blue. Within minutes, you pass through the photic zone, the last realm of sunlight. The world on the screen turns from indigo to a deep, velvety black. The only light now is the artificial glare from Clementine's own powerful lamps, cutting a solitary cone into the infinite darkness. You are on a journey to an alien planet. Strange bioluminescent creatures, life forms that have never known the sun, drift past the camera lens like fleeting constellations. The depth gauge scrolls relentlessly. 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet. You enter the abyssal zone. The temperature of the water plummets to near freezing. The pressure, you are constantly reminded by the readouts, is building to an almost unimaginable level, over 7,000 pounds per square inch. Enough to crush a tank like a soda can. The entire 3-mile length of the pipe string is under immense tension, groaning under its own colossal weight and the weight of Clementine. A single microscopic flaw in a weld, one improperly threaded joint, could cause the entire string to snap, sending a billion-dollar project plunging into the silt forever. In the control room, the operators are locked in a state of intense concentration. They work in shifts, their faces illuminated by the ghostly glow of the screens. They are not merely lowering a machine, they are flying it. Using the dynamic positioning system and the gimbal derrick, they make minute adjustments, keeping the pipe string perfectly vertical against the pull of unseen deep-sea currents. Their hands are on the controls, but their minds are 3 miles below, navigating a hostile, invisible world by the proxy of electronic senses. No operation this unprecedented could possibly go off without a hitch. This is our lesser-known detail, the unrecorded moments of near disaster. It's theorized that during the long descent, the crew encountered terrifying technical problems that remain classified to this day. You can imagine the sudden spike of adrenaline in the control room. A sensor indicates a pipe joint isn't properly seated, forcing them to painstakingly raise a mile of the string to fix it. Or a primary camera on Clementine flickers and dies, leaving them partially blind and forcing them to rely on backup systems. The most chilling possibility is that the pipe string, like a gigantic guitar string, began to vibrate in a powerful, unknown current, a resonant frequency that threatened to shake the entire assembly apart. In these moments, the engineers would have had to improvise solutions to problems no one had ever faced before, all while maintaining a calm, industrial facade for the Soviet observers on the surface. After what feels like an eternity, the sonar altimeter on Clementine indicates that you are approaching the bottom. The rate of descent is slowed to a crawl. The operators lean closer to their screens. For days, the camera feeds have shown nothing but the black water and the occasional drifting particle of marine snow. But now, the cone of light reflects off something solid. The flat, featureless, muddy expanse of the abyssal plain resolves on the monitors. It is a stark alien landscape, untouched since the dawn of time. They have arrived. You have piloted your machine through a 3-mile vertical labyrinth of darkness and pressure. You are now hovering just feet above the ocean floor, at the precise coordinates your intelligence provided years ago. The most delicate and suspenseful moment of the entire mission is at hand. This brings us to our next heart-pounding critical question. After a 3-mile multi-day journey into a realm of crushing pressure and absolute darkness, you've brought your weapon to the gates of the tomb. But what will you find there? Will the prize be intact, ready for capture? Or will it be a field of scattered debris, a final, crushing disappointment at the bottom of the world? You are in the control room of the Glomar Explorer, and the silence is so thick you can feel it pressing in on you. Down below, 3 miles deep, Clementine hovers just above the seabed. The target is not immediately visible. For all the precision of the SOSUS network, the coordinates are for an area, not a single point. You now have to find a 100-foot-long piece of a submarine in the pitch-black, alien landscape of the abyssal plain. The operators begin a slow, methodical search pattern, what they call mowing the lawn. Clementine glides just over the silt, its powerful lights cutting a moving circle into the darkness. The tension in the room is electric. Minutes feel like hours. With every empty sweep of the lights, a cold dread begins to form in your gut. What if it's not here? What if after all this, the intelligence was wrong? Then an operator's voice cuts through the stillness, sharp and controlled. Contact. Edge of screen. Every head in the room snaps to a single monitor. You see it. On the very periphery of the light's cone, there's a shape. It's long, dark, and linear. It is not a rock. It is not a natural feature of the seabed. It is man-made. The operator's hands are steady on the controls as he nudges Clementine closer. The cone of light slides forward, and the shape resolves into a full, horrifying, and magnificent reality. You have found it. The mangled, broken hull of the K-129. This is our established fact. The mission successfully located the wreckage. In the control room, there is no cheer, only a collective, silent exhalation. A wave of awe, relief, and the profound, somber gravity of the moment washes over you. You are staring at a tomb. The image on the screen is ghostly. The forward third of the submarine lies before you, canted over on its side, its nose half buried in the deep ocean silt. The steel is a patchwork of decay, streaked with rust and draped with the delicate skeletal remains of deep-sea organisms. You can clearly see the jagged, torn metal where the rest of the submarine was ripped away in the cataclysm. The sail, the structure that rises from the top of the hull, is still attached, but it's battered and deformed. It is a chilling, desolate sight, a monument to a secret tragedy. The mission immediately shifts from search to survey. For the next several hours, Clementine becomes a deep-sea forensic drone. It circles the wreckage with meticulous care, its cameras documenting every angle, every wound. The geologists on board are now revealed for what they are: intelligence analysts, naval architects, and submarine experts. They are assessing the prize. Is the hull strong enough to survive being lifted? They identify the weakest points, the fractures and corrosion that could doom the attempt. They identify key features: the forward torpedo room, the sonar dome in the bow, parts of the control room. They confirm that this section does not contain the nuclear missile silos or the primary code room. Those valuable prizes were in the larger section of the hull that broke away and lies somewhere else in the darkness. As the cameras pan across the scene, they capture every detail of the wreck and the surrounding seabed. And this is where we encounter our lesser-known detail, a truly chilling fringe theory. The theory posits that the cameras recorded something they did not expect to see. Not debris from the K-129, but clear, distinct tracks in the soft silt around the wreckage. Tracks that could only have been made by the treads or skids of another deep submergence vehicle. The implication is terrifying. Had someone else been here first? Did the Soviets, in a secret operation the CIA knew nothing about, manage to find their own submarine? Or worse, was some other unknown party aware of this sunken treasure? If true, it would mean that from the very beginning, the entire operation was compromised. The secret you held was not a secret at all. This unsettling possibility, if it was ever real, is pushed aside. The survey is complete. The analysts have built their model. The wreck is fragile, the risks are high, but they believe the lift is possible. The project manager, after a final consultation, gives the command. The capture attempt is a go. The time for observation is over. The time for action has arrived. You have found your ghost in the abyss. You have stared it in the eye and mapped its wounds. The plan, against all odds, has held together. But now comes the moment of truth, the irreversible commitment of the entire project. This brings us to our final, fearsome, critical question. You've stared at your ghost, you've mapped its wounds and assessed its fragility. Now comes the moment of truth, the point of no return. How do you command a 4-story tall robot to gently embrace a decaying tomb without shattering it, all while your enemies watch from 3 miles above, completely unaware of the desecration you are about to commit? You are in the control room, a silent observer in a theater of immense slow-motion tension. The time for surveying is over. The command is given to initiate the capture. On the monitors you watch as the operators, with a surgeon's precision, maneuver the colossal Clementine directly over the forward section of the K-129. The movements are measured in inches. A slight miscalculation could damage the fragile hull or the capture vehicle itself. After a final, tense alignment, the vehicle is lowered, and its massive frame settles around the submarine like a cage. The command is given to deploy the outriggers. With a soft hiss of hydraulics, Clementine's legs extend, planting themselves deep in the ocean silt, providing a firm, stable base for the most delicate moment of the entire operation. Then, the embrace. The operators activate the massive tines, the steel fingers of the capture vehicle. You watch, holding your breath as the gates begin to close. They are not designed to crush, but to slide through the mud and meet underneath the submarine's keel. It is a slow, powerful, and surprisingly gentle maneuver. The tines interlock, forming a solid steel cradle beneath the wreckage. For a brief, triumphant moment, the mission is a perfect success. The ghost of the K-129 is securely in your grasp. The outriggers are retracted. On the Glomar Explorer 3 miles above, the great gimbaled derrick groans as it takes up the immense strain. The lift begins. On the monitors, you see the seabed begin to recede. The submarine, cradled in Clementine's arms, is now suspended in the black water. It is an unbelievable sight. The impossible is happening. You are stealing a ghost from the bottom of the world. The ascent is even more painstaking than the descent. The operators constantly monitor the strain on the pipe string, the stability of the load, the pressure on Clementine's hydraulic systems. Foot by foot, the prize is drawn up from the abyss. And then, catastrophe. This is the established fact, the official CIA account of what happened next. The lift has been proceeding for hours. You have brought the prize thousands of feet off the ocean floor. Suddenly, you don't see it on the screen, you feel it. A violent, sickening jolt shudders up the entire 3-mile length of the pipe string, a deep-sea earthquake that is felt as a physical shock on the ship itself. The image on the video monitors whites out in a blizzard of static and disturbed silt. When it clears, you are looking at a scene of mechanical horror. Several of Clementine's massive forged steel tines, the very fingers of the cradle, have buckled and snapped under the immense weight. The structural integrity of the lift is gone. The submarine wreckage, no longer evenly supported, cracks under its own immense weight and the strain of the lift. You watch, helpless, as the larger rearward portion of the captured section, the part containing the coveted forward command and control areas, breaks away. It twists slowly, hideously, in the cone of light, a great dark shape tumbling end over end. Then, it plunges back into the darkness from which it came. It vanishes from sight, lost forever, leaving behind nothing but a swirling cloud of mud and rust. A stunned, horrified silence blankets the control room. Years of planning, billions of dollars, the lives of the men on the submarine, and the intense, focused work of the crew, all of it has culminated in this single moment of catastrophic failure. Dangling in the broken remains of Clementine's grasp is a single, relatively small piece of the prize, the very front tip of the submarine's bow. But was this failure real? This is where we must introduce our lesser-known detail, the seed of the great conspiracy theory at the heart of this story. The failure seems almost too convenient. The official story is that the most valuable part of the wreckage, the part with the real intelligence secrets, was the part that was lost. The part that was successfully recovered was, by comparison, of secondary value. Was this the truth? Or was the story of the fracture a brilliant piece of pre-planned disinformation? Imagine a cover story created in a CIA boardroom, designed to be deployed in the event the mission was ever compromised. A story that would lead the Soviets to believe the operation was a failure, that their most vital secrets were safe. Did the claws really break? Or did the CIA's official report simply say they broke? For now, you are left with the official story, a mission of breathtaking ambition ending in heartbreaking failure. The crew is faced with the long, somber task of raising a broken machine and the meager prize it still contains. This raises a stark and immediate critical question. When you suffer a catastrophic failure in the deepest, most secret place on Earth, what is the value of what's left? After the grand prize slips through your fingers and vanishes into the dark, what secrets can you possibly hope to find in the wreckage of your own broken ambition? The elation of contact and the horror of the fracture have passed. You are now left with the long, grim task of reeling in your broken line. The mood in the Glomar Explorer's control room is one of quiet, professional disappointment. For days, the derrick works in reverse, raising the millions of pounds of the pipe string and the broken clementine from the abyss. Each 60-foot section of pipe that is removed and stacked is a reminder of how close they came to a perfect success. On the surface, the Soviet ships continue their silent, ignorant vigil, completely unaware that the grand prize has been won and then lost in the darkness below them. Finally, the moment arrives. The massive, damaged form of Clementine, with its strange and tragic cargo, is lifted into the sanctuary of the moon pool. With a great hydraulic groan, the massive doors on the ship's hull slide shut, sealing you off from the outside world. The seawater is pumped out of the cavernous hangar, and there, under the harsh glare of industrial lights, you see it for the first time with your own eyes: the spoils of Project Azorian. The official haul, what the CIA would later admit to recovering, was both a stunning intelligence victory and a profound disappointment. This is our established fact. What rests on the floor of the moon pool is a 38-foot-long section of the K-129's extreme bow. It is a mangled ruin of steel, a testament to the violence of its end and the partial failure of its recovery. But within this ruin lies the mission's saving grace: 2 complete, nuclear-tipped torpedoes. For U.S. naval intelligence, this was a prize of immense value. You can see the analysts, their geologist cover now dropped, swarming the wreckage. By dissecting these weapons, they could reverse engineer the secrets of Soviet tactical nuclear capabilities. They could study the warhead design, the plutonium trigger, the guidance systems, and the acoustic seekers that steered the torpedoes toward their targets. It was a direct look into their enemy's playbook for undersea warfare. But there was another, far more somber discovery within the wreckage. Amidst the twisted metal and wiring, the recovery team found the remains of 6 Soviet submariners. The cold, geopolitical calculus of the mission suddenly collided with a stark human reality. These were not just intelligence targets, they were men, frozen in their final, terrible moments. Their presence transformed the moon pool from a secret workshop into a temporary morgue, and added a layer of profound gravity to the operation. The rest of the haul was a collection of debris, fragments of machinery, waterlogged manuals, and the small personal effects of the crew, each item a tiny, poignant clue to a lost world. The moon pool is now the most secret laboratory on the planet. Technicians in protective gear move with grim purpose, carefully disarming the nuclear warheads and beginning the painstaking process of disassembly. Every piece of the wreckage is photographed, tagged, and cataloged. The human remains are treated with a quiet, professional respect, moved to a refrigerated section of the hold. But was this all they found? This is where we examine a lesser-known detail. The official story emphasizes the torpedoes. However, a compelling theory suggests that other, equally valuable intelligence was recovered from that bow section. The very nose of the submarine housed the transducers for its sonar system. Recovering these ears would have given American analysts critical insights into the frequencies and sensitivities of Soviet sonar, a huge advantage in the silent, underwater game of hide-and-seek. It's plausible that the CIA, in its official accounting of the mission, would have downplayed or completely omitted such a find to protect the true extent of what they had learned. Was it worth it? You can hear the question being debated in the hushed conversations among the CIA officers on board. Billions of dollars spent, years of effort, and immense risk taken, all for a 38-foot piece of a submarine. They had failed to recover the main prize: the code books, the crypto machines, the ballistic missiles. Yet the torpedoes alone represented a massive intelligence coup. The mission was not the grand slam they had hoped for, but it was far from a total failure. But now, a new and entirely unforeseen problem presents itself. The CIA is in possession of not just secret Soviet hardware, but the bodies of Soviet sailors. This moves the mission beyond the realm of pure intelligence and into something far more human. This leads to our next unexpected critical question. You have succeeded in stealing a piece of your enemy's technology, but in doing so, you've also become the custodian of their dead. In a secret war defined by deception and ruthless calculation, what do you do with the bodies of your fallen adversaries? Do you dispose of them in secret? Or do you do something that seems utterly antithetical to the entire mission? Show them respect? You have the wreckage, the intelligence, and the dead. The cold, technical phase of the mission is over, and now you, as the ranking CIA officer on the Glomar Explorer, are faced with a dilemma for which there is no protocol in any spy manual. What is to be done with the remains of the 6 Soviet sailors? The purely pragmatic, cold-blooded option is to dispose of them quietly, to bury them at sea with no ceremony, treating them as unfortunate but necessary collateral in a vital intelligence operation. It would be the simplest, most secure solution. But another impulse, something far more human, takes hold. A decision comes down from the highest levels of the CIA. These men will be given a full and formal military burial. The reasons are a complex mixture of pragmatism and principle. It is a nod to the unwritten code of the sea, a sign of respect from one sailor to another, even across the chasm of the Cold War. It is also a shrewd calculation. If the story of the recovery ever broke, proof that the bodies were handled with honor would be a powerful defense against accusations of grave desecration. And perhaps, in the midst of this ruthless act of espionage, it was simply a profoundly decent thing to do. And so, on September 4th, 1974, one of the most surreal and poignant events of the Cold War takes place on the deck of the Hughes Glomar Explorer. This is our established fact, an event captured on now declassified CIA film. You are standing on the deck with the rest of the crew. The loud industrial work has ceased. The ship is quiet. On the horizon, the Soviet watch ship is still a gray silhouette, too far away to witness the strange ceremony. The American crew, a mix of hardened roughnecks and clandestine CIA officers, are assembled. An honor guard stands ready. Before you is a single heavy steel casket containing the remains of the 6 Soviet sailors. It is draped with the Soviet naval ensign, the hammer and sickle on a field of red and blue. You know that the crew, lacking an official Soviet flag, painstakingly recreated this one from descriptions in a shipboard encyclopedia. A CIA officer, acting as chaplain, steps forward and begins to read a burial service, first in English, then translated into Russian. His voice, carried by the wind, speaks of commending the souls of these sailors to the deep, acknowledging their service to their country. Then, as the honor guard prepares to commit the casket to the sea, a new sound plays over the ship's loudspeakers, the powerful, somber strains of the Soviet national anthem. You stand at attention, an American spy on an American spy ship, honoring the anthem of your sworn enemy. The moment is thick with a strange, powerful sense of shared humanity. At the anthem's conclusion, the honor guard tilts the gurney, and the steel casket slides smoothly over the side of the ship. It strikes the water with a heavy splash and disappears into the waves, returning the sailors to the Pacific that is their final resting place. The entire ceremony, you notice, is being filmed by a CIA cameraman, creating a permanent record of this incredible act. The ceremony itself is a documented fact, but our lesser-known detail is the profound, unrecorded psychological impact this event may have had on the crew. For months, you and the men around you have been living a lie. The K-129 was an intelligence objective, a target. The mission was a cold, amoral, technical exercise. But this ceremony shattered that detachment. It forced you to confront the reality that the target was also a tomb. The men you just buried were not just faceless adversaries. They were fellow mariners. This theory suggests that for a brief, strange moment, the lines of the Cold War blurred. The burial was an act of empathy that cut through the paranoia and deception, a shared moment of grace that left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. With the ceremony concluded, a strange chapter of the mission is closed. The human debt has been paid with honor. The Glomar Explorer turns its bow for home, its partial secret prize secured in its belly. The at-sea operation is over, but the secret itself is more vulnerable than ever. This brings us to a new and dangerous phase of the story, and our next critical question. You've pulled off an impossible feat of engineering and maintained a perfect cover under the very noses of your enemy. You've even managed a moment of grace and honor in the midst of it all. But how do you keep a secret this big, involving thousands of people and billions of dollars once you return to shore. What happens when the mission ends, but the paper trail remains? The Glomar explorer slips quietly back to the American coast, its mission complete. In a final, clandestine ballet, it meets the submersible HMB-1, and its broken prize, along with the damaged Clementine, is transferred into the floating hangar. The precious intelligence haul is on its way to a secure facility for relentless analysis. The crew is debriefed one last time, paid a handsome bonus, and sworn to a lifetime of absolute secrecy under penalty of treason. You are back in the quiet, climate-controlled offices of Langley. For a few brief months in late 1974, it seems the secret has held. Project Azorian, for all its flaws and partial failures, is a success, locked away in the nation's most secure vaults. But the fate of a secret this large is rarely decided by the spies who keep it. It is often determined by pure random chance. To find the first crack in the story, you must leave the world of espionage and travel to Los Angeles. The date is June 5, 1974. The Glomar explorer is, at this very moment, sailing towards its target in the mid-Pacific. You are now with a small crew of professional burglars, finalizing a plan. Your target is not a bank or a museum. It is a corporate warehouse on Romaine Street in Hollywood, the headquarters of Howard Hughes' Summa Corporation. You are not after state secrets. You are after the billionaire's rumored secret stash of cash and diamonds. This is our established fact. On that night, a group of thieves successfully broke into the Hughes headquarters. It was a classic, well-executed heist. You see them disabling the sophisticated alarm systems, cutting a hole in the roof, and rappelling down into the darkened offices. You watch as they search for the mythical vault. But there is no vault. There is no cash. Frustrated and running out of time, you and your crew do what any burglar would do. You grab what looks valuable. You take some electronics, and then you turn your attention to the file cabinets. You pry them open and begin stuffing boxes with documents, internal memos, and magnetic tapes. Anything that might contain corporate secrets you could later sell or use for blackmail. In one of those boxes, lying amidst mundane contracts and accounting ledgers, is a single piece of paper that will change everything. You don't know it at the time, but you have just stolen a ticking time bomb. It is a memo, written by a Hughes executive, that discusses the details and budget for the Glomar Explorer, and crucially, it explicitly mentions the project's secret sponsor, the Central Intelligence Agency. The burglars have, through sheer blind luck, found the Rosetta Stone of Project Azorian, the irrefutable link between the eccentric billionaire's mining project and the U.S. government's spy apparatus. The thieves, not yet realizing the geopolitical dynamite they possess, first try to ransom the documents back to the Hughes organization. But dealing with the chaotic and paranoid inner circle of the recluse proves impossible. Their demands go nowhere. But who, exactly, were these thieves? This is where we find our lesser-known detail. The official story portrays them as common criminals who stumbled into the score of a lifetime. But a persistent fringe theory suggests the burglary was anything but random. Was it an act of industrial espionage by a corporate rival? A black bag operation by a foreign intelligence service that had gotten a whisper of the mission from a mole? Or, in the paranoid, Watergate-soaked atmosphere of 1974, was it orchestrated by political enemies of the White House or the CIA, searching for any dirt they could find? The idea that a multi-billion-dollar secret was unraveled by a simple, lucky break-in has always struck some as just a little too convenient. Whatever their origin, the burglars are now stuck. They possess a document of immense value that they cannot sell, so they turn to their only remaining option. They decide to leak it. The existence of a Hughes CIA memo begins to circulate as a rumor in the Los Angeles underworld. The story is eventually whispered to law enforcement, and from there, it makes its way to the ears of investigative journalists. The secret of Project Azorian has escaped the control of the CIA. It is now a wild piece of information, a story waiting for a reporter to put it all together. A random act of theft has breached the highest levels of national security. The CIA is about to face a new and unfamiliar adversary, one that cannot be intimidated by warships or fooled by cover stories. This leads to a desperate new phase in the operation. And our next critical question: when your deepest secret escapes the secure vaults of the intelligence world, and falls into the hands of common criminals, how do you even begin to contain the damage? What tools does a spy agency have to fight a threat that operates not with spy ships and satellites, but with anonymous phone calls and whispered tips to reporters? The secret of Project Azorian is no longer a ghost contained within the steel hull of the Glomar explorer. It is a rumor, a whisper passed from the criminal underworld to the press, and now it has landed on the desk of the one person the CIA truly fears, a determined investigative journalist. You are now Seymour Hersh, a reporter for the New York Times with a reputation for breaking the stories no one else can. You receive a tip that sounds like the plot of a pulp novel: Howard Hughes, the CIA, and a secret mission to steal a sunken Soviet nuclear submarine. Your journalistic instincts scream that it's too crazy not to have a grain of truth. You pick up the phone and start digging. Your phone calls trigger alarms deep inside CIA headquarters. You are now William Colby, the Director of Central Intelligence. Through surveillance and sources within the media, you learn that Hersh is connecting the dots with terrifying speed and accuracy. The panic that sets in at Langley is not just about the potential embarrassment of a failed mission being exposed. Your primary overwhelming concern is for a far greater secret: the SOSUS network. You know that if the story of how the K-129 was found gets out, it will expose the existence and capabilities of America's underwater ears. SOSUS is an active, vital intelligence asset, far more important than the one-time prize of the submarine. Protecting it is your absolute priority. This is our established fact. Director Colby took the extraordinary step of personally intervening to kill the story. You leave your Langley office and go on a desperate tour of America's most powerful newsrooms. You sit down with the top editors of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times. You cannot confirm the story, of course, but you appeal to their patriotism. You tell them in the gravest possible terms that publishing what they know will cause grave and irreparable harm to the national security of the United States. You hint at delicate arms control negotiations with the Soviets that could be jeopardized. It is a full-court press by the nation's top spy, and for a time it works. The editors, weighing their duty to inform against the director's dire warnings, agree to hold the story. Seymour Hersh is told to stand down. But you cannot stop every inquiry. While the big newspapers are muzzled, other journalists are probing the edges of the mystery. A reporter files a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA request, formally asking the CIA for any records relating to the Hughes Glomar explorer. This puts you and the agency in a terrible legal bind. You cannot lie and say no records exist. Your lawyers know that would be perjury. But you cannot admit that records do exist, as that would confirm the very link you are desperately trying to conceal. You are trapped. To solve this paradox, a team of CIA lawyers convenes. This is our lesser-known detail, the origin story of a phrase that would change the landscape of government secrecy. They brainstorm, looking for a third way, a legal construction that is not yes and not no. They need a statement that is technically truthful but reveals nothing. A shield that can be used to protect any black project whose very existence is a secret. What they create is a masterpiece of calculated ambiguity. The CIA's official response to the FOIA request is a carefully crafted paragraph that will become legendary. It states, "We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the information requested, but hypothetically, if such data were to exist, the subject matter would be classified and could not be disclosed." It is the birth of the Glomar response. It is a legal brick wall. It allows the agency to refuse a request without having to lie about the existence of the documents in question. It has since become a standard tool used by intelligence agencies around the world to deflect inquiries into their most secret operations. You have now, it seems, contained the threat. The major media outlets have been silenced by appeals to patriotism. Legal inquiries are being deflected by the brilliant new Glomar response. The secret of Project Azorian, which was on the verge of exploding into public view, appears to have been wrestled back into the shadows. But secrets, once they escape into the wild, are not so easily caged. This temporary fragile victory leads you to a final, looming critical question. You've used the immense power of your office to appeal to patriotism and have invented a brilliant legal phrase to build a wall of silence around your secret. But in a free society, Can you ever truly kill a story this big? What happens when a journalist outside of the major power centers of Washington and New York decides that the public's right to know outweighs the government's plea for secrecy? You have built a fortress of secrecy around Project Azorian. You have used personal appeals to muzzle the country's most powerful newspapers and a brilliant legal phrase to deflect all official inquiries. For a few tense months in late 1974 and early 1975, your fortress holds. The story is an open secret within the elite circles of Washington journalism, a piece of dynamite that everyone is too afraid to light. But you are in post-Watergate America. The relationship between the press and the government is shattered, and the public's suspicion of official secrecy is at an all-time high. The silence is fragile and it cannot last. The pressure is building most intensely in the newsroom of the Los Angeles Times. The editors there know the whole story. They were part of Director Colby's original plea for silence, and they have honored it. But you can feel their calculations shifting. The Hughes burglary, the event that started the leak, happened in their city. This is their story. They begin to hear that smaller publications, less beholden to the Washington establishment, are getting close to publishing. You realize that the story is going to break, with or without you. The only question is whether you will be the one to tell it, or whether you will be the newspaper that got scooped on the biggest intelligence story of the decade. The final trigger comes not with a bang, but with a whimper. This is our established fact. A small, garbled account of the Glomar mission appears in a wire service report, sourced from a legal document related to the Hughes burglary trial. The cat is not just out of the bag, it is sprinting down the street. In the newsroom of the Los Angeles Times, you see the editors huddle one last time. The debate is over. Their duty as journalists to inform the public now outweighs their secret agreement with the CIA. The decision is made. Run it. On February 7, 1975, the dam breaks. The Los Angeles Times hits the streets with a massive front-page story by reporter Jack Nelson. The headline is a bombshell that blows the lid off the entire operation. You can imagine the scene across the country as people open their morning papers. The story has everything: the CIA, the reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes, the futuristic Glomar explorer, and the audacious, almost unbelievable mission to raise a sunken Soviet nuclear submarine from a depth of 3 miles. The CIA's secret is now a public spectacle. The story is immediately picked up by every television network, every radio station, and every newspaper in the world. The wall of silence you so carefully constructed has been demolished. The public reaction is a tidal wave of astonishment. There is a sense of grudging admiration for the sheer, magnificent audacity of the American government. But there is also a deep and cynical anger. In the wake of Watergate and the Vietnam War, the CIA's desperate attempts to suppress the story are seen as yet another example of a secretive, unaccountable government lying to its people. The mission, mistakenly dubbed Project Jennifer by the press, becomes an instant legend, a shorthand for the incredible, sometimes terrifying lengths the superpowers would go to in the Cold War. But who truly deserves the credit or the blame for breaking the story? This is our lesser-known detail. While the Los Angeles Times published the first comprehensive authoritative account, a persistent theory gives credit to the muckraking columnist Jack Anderson. It's suggested that Anderson, who was not bound by any agreement with Colby, had been leaking bits and pieces of the story on his radio show for days, if not weeks, beforehand. His reporting was less detailed, but he was deliberately lighting fuses, increasing the pressure on the mainstream papers to act. According to this theory, the LA Times didn't just decide to publish, they were forced to, panicked that Anderson was about to scoop them on their own story. The secret wasn't broken by a single clean shot, but by a chaotic volley of leaks and competitive pressure. The story is out. The mission is exposed. The most expensive and ambitious covert operation of the Cold War is now the subject of public debate and ridicule. The CIA has lost control of its own narrative, and now the entire US government must face the consequences. This brings us to the most dangerous and unpredictable part of the fallout, and our next critical question. Your secret is now a front-page headline around the world. The elaborate cover story is in tatters. The one thing you feared most has happened. What do you do when the enemy you went to such extraordinary lengths to deceive finally learns the truth? How will the Soviet Union react to the news that the CIA tried to steal one of its nuclear submarines from the bottom of the ocean? The story of Project Azorian is now a blazing front-page headline across the globe. You are in the Kremlin, and the news lands with the force of a physical explosion. The reports from your Washington embassy and KGB assets confirm the unbelievable. The Americans, under the comical guise of a Howard Hughes mining operation, had not only located your lost submarine K-129, but had actually tried to steal it. The audacity is breathtaking. The expected response, the one the world is waiting for, is a firestorm of diplomatic rage. You anticipate a furious denunciation at the United Nations, the expulsion of American diplomats, and perhaps even military posturing. This was, after all, an act of espionage so profound it bordered on an act of war, a desecration of a military grave. But the firestorm never comes. Instead, there is a strange and deafening silence. This is our established fact. The official Soviet reaction was remarkably, almost bizarrely, muted. The state-controlled media, newspapers like Pravda and Izvestia, ran only short, perfunctory articles that briefly summarized the American news reports. There was no angry commentary, no official condemnation from the Politburo. To the outside world, it appeared the Soviet Union was simply ignoring it. Why? You are a Western diplomat in Moscow, and you are mystified. To understand the silence, you have to understand the brutal logic of the Cold War. For the Soviet Union to protest loudly would be to publicly admit to a cascade of humiliating failures. First, they would have to admit that they had lost a nuclear-armed submarine and its crew. Second, they would have to admit that their own powerful navy, despite a massive 2-month search, had been utterly incapable of finding it. Third, they would have to acknowledge that the Americans had not only found it with ease, but had done so using a sophisticated underwater surveillance system, SOSUS, whose capabilities they had clearly and disastrously underestimated. And finally, they would have to admit that they had been completely fooled by the cover story, that their own intelligence services had watched the entire heist unfold without ever realizing what was happening. To protest would be to air their own dirty laundry on a global stage. It was far less embarrassing to remain silent, to treat the whole affair as a piece of sensationalist Western propaganda beneath their contempt. Of course, behind the scenes, a furious storm was raging within the Kremlin and the Soviet Naval Command. Quiet but forceful diplomatic protests were lodged through back channels. Demands were made, and accounting was sought. But the public face was a mask of indifference. This public exposure, however, had one very real and immediate consequence. It slammed the door on any future recovery attempts. This leads us to our lesser-known detail. The CIA was in fact already planning a second mission, codenamed Matador. The Glomar explorer was being kept in a state of readiness, its crew on standby, to return to target site Azorian. Their goal was to go after the grand prize, the larger, more valuable section of the K-129 that had allegedly broken off and fallen back to the seabed. This was the section containing the missile silos, the cryptographic machines, and the codebooks. The news stories of February 1975 killed Project Matador instantly. With the location of the wreckage now public knowledge, the Soviets would have a flotilla of warships permanently parked over the site. Any attempt by the Glomar explorer to return would be met with a direct military confrontation. The game was up. The window of opportunity, which the CIA had so brilliantly created, was now sealed forever. The story of the K-129's recovery was officially over. In a final quiet diplomatic exchange, the United States provided the Soviet government with the film of the burial at sea, a somber, respectful end to a bizarre and aggressive chapter of the Cold War. The operation is over. The public knows a version of the story. The Soviets know a version of the story. But the lingering questions, the inconsistencies, and the sheer convenience of the official narrative have created a fertile ground for suspicion. This brings us to the core mystery that remains today, and our next critical question. The Soviets' silence was a tacit admission of their own failure, but it was also a brilliant strategic move. By not protesting, they avoided public humiliation. But what if their silence was also based on a secret belief, a nagging fear, That the American failure was itself a lie? Could it be that the most compelling reason for the Soviets to stay quiet was the terrifying possibility that the CIA had actually gotten away with everything? You are now entering the heart of the mystery, the place where the official history ends and the enduring conspiracy begins. The question that has haunted Project Azorian for nearly 50 years now takes center stage. What if the failure was a lie? You must now set aside the official account and look at the story as a professional intelligence analyst would. You must assume that everything you've been told is a potential deception. Your guiding principle is simple. In the world of espionage, a story that is perfectly convenient is almost certainly untrue. The compelling counter-theory is this. Project Azorian was a near-perfect and total success. The CIA recovered the entire targeted section of the K-129. The story of the broken claw, the catastrophic fracture, and the prize plunging back into the abyss was a masterful piece of disinformation. A cover story concocted from the very beginning to conceal the mission's stunning victory. Let's deconstruct the official narrative. First, you must consider the sheer convenience of the failure. The part of the submarine that allegedly broke away was the most valuable section. The part containing the forward control room, the cryptographic equipment, and potentially the codebooks. The part they managed to save, the bow section with the torpedoes, was valuable. Yes, but its intelligence was finite. The codebooks, on the other hand, were the keys to the kingdom. They would have unlocked the secrets of the entire Soviet Pacific Fleet. Is it not remarkably convenient that the one part of the prize that would force the Soviets to immediately change all their codes and procedures was the part that was lost, while the part they kept was the one that wouldn't? It's a classic intelligence playbook maneuver. Admit to a limited success to mask a total victory. Next, you must ask for the proof. Where is the undeniable, independently verified evidence of this catastrophic failure? The only sources for this event are the CIA itself and the carefully selected and edited film footage they released decades after the fact. You see clips of the recovery and the burial, but you do not see a continuous unedited shot of the claw breaking and the main prize falling away. In the absence of such proof, you are left with the word of a professional intelligence agency, an organization whose very business is deception. Their official report is not evidence, it is a narrative, and it could have been crafted to serve a purpose. Finally, and most critically, you must consider the motive for the lie. The motive was not simply to avoid the embarrassment of a billion-dollar project failing. The motive was to maximize the value of the intelligence they had just stolen. If you are the CIA and you have just successfully recovered the Soviet Navy's codebooks, the very last thing you want is for the Soviets to know it. If they know, they will change every code and cipher overnight, and your priceless prize becomes worthless. But if you can convince them that the code room is still resting safely 3 miles down at the bottom of the Pacific, they may see no urgent need to change their codes. The lie, therefore, was not the epilogue to the mission. It was an essential part of the mission, designed to prolong the life of the intelligence for months, or perhaps even years. In this version of the story, you are in the moon pool of the Glomar explorer, and you see the entire massive section of the K-129 brought on board, intact. You see the analysts find the crypto machines. You see them find the Holy Grail, the waterlogged but legible codebooks. It is the intelligence coup of the century. And at that moment, the second phase of the mission, the disinformation plan, kicks in. The story of the broken claw is activated. Perhaps they even deliberately damage Clementine after the fact, to create wreckage that can be filmed for the official record. This leads to an even deeper layer of deception, our lesser-known detail within the conspiracy. If you were going to create a lie this big, how would you make it stick? A fringe theory suggests the CIA may have gone one step further. After securing the real prize, they could have used the HMB-1 or another vessel to return to the site and assault the mine. They could have planted debris on the ocean floor, perhaps even a specially manufactured broken tine from Clementine, for any future Soviet search effort to discover. It is the ultimate act of spycraft, creating a false crime scene to provide physical evidence that corroborates your lie. This counter-narrative is compelling. It paints the CIA not as brilliant but flawed, but as ruthlessly, perfectly competent. But a theory, no matter how logical, is not proof. This forces us to our next critical question. If the CIA did pull off a perfect heist and a perfect cover-up, would any evidence have survived? Decades later, with thousands of pages of documents declassified, albeit heavily redacted, can we find any cracks in the official story? Can we read between the blacked-out lines to find a hint of the truth? The theory of a perfect success hidden by a perfect lie is compelling, but it is just a theory. To find the truth, you must turn from speculation to the evidence. Decades after the mission, under the relentless pressure of Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, the CIA began to declassify thousands of pages of documents related to Project Azorian. You are now a historical researcher, your desk piled high with these released files, hoping to find a crack in the official story. What you find is a maze of black ink. The documents are a mix of budget proposals, engineering reports, internal memos, and after-action analyses, but they are brutally censored. Entire paragraphs, pages, and sometimes whole sections are covered by thick black redaction bars. The hand of the government censor is heavy, and it conceals as much as it reveals. This is our established fact. The unredacted portions of the declassified record consistently and repeatedly support the official narrative. You read memos that discuss the unexpected breakup of the target object. You see engineering analyses of the structural failure of the capture vehicle. You find intelligence reports that focus almost exclusively on the value of the 2 recovered nuclear torpedoes. If you were to only read the words left visible, you would conclude that the mission was an impressive but ultimately partial and disappointing success. The case, it seems, is closed, but you are not here to read the words. You are here to read the silence. The true art of analyzing declassified documents is in studying the redactions themselves. You start to see a pattern. Why, you ask, is a technical schematic of Clementine's hydraulic system almost entirely blacked out if the claw simply broke under stress? Why is the entire chapter on the disposition and analysis of recovered materials redacted when we have been officially told that all they recovered were 2 torpedoes, 6 bodies, and miscellaneous debris? The sheer volume of what is being hidden is in itself deeply suspicious. If the mission was a failure, what is there left to hide? The vast black spaces in the document seem to shout a secret of a haul far greater than the one that was officially acknowledged. This suspicion is powerfully reinforced by our lesser-known detail, a piece of circumstantial evidence that many researchers consider the smoking gun. In the years immediately following Project Azorian, from roughly 1975 into the early 1980s, something remarkable happened within U.S. naval intelligence. They experienced a sudden, dramatic, and unexplained leap in their ability to track and anticipate the movements of the Soviet submarine fleet. This period is sometimes referred to by naval historians as the Glomar boom or the Azorian breakthrough. Suddenly, American attack submarines seemed to know exactly where to find their Soviet counterparts. The U.S. gained a profound and decisive advantage in the underwater Cold War. The theory is that this boom was no coincidence. And so, the debate rages on to this day. On one side, you have the official historians who stick to the declassified text. On the other, you have a vocal community of independent researchers and former intelligence officers who are utterly convinced that the partial failure was the CIA's greatest disinformation triumph. Key figures from the project maintained the official story until their dying day, but often with a cryptic, knowing smile that only fueled further speculation. You are left in a state of historical purgatory, caught between an official story that feels too neat and a conspiracy that feels too logical. The paper trail is a dead end, a hall of mirrors constructed by the CIA's censors. This forces you to look for a different kind of evidence, a more tangible clue. This brings us to our next critical question. When the paper trail is deliberately obscured and the witnesses are sworn to secrecy, can the machines themselves tell a story? What happened to the incredible, one-of-a-kind vessels built for this mission? Does the strange afterlife of the Glomar explorer and its submersible barge hold any final clues to the truth? The paper trail of Project Azorian is a carefully constructed labyrinth of redactions, leaving you with compelling theories but no definitive proof. But what about the machines themselves? The billion-dollar tools of the heist could not be redacted. You can't draw a black bar over a 63,000-ton ship. Their strange afterlives, their second careers after the mission, may hold the final clues to the truth of their original purpose. After 1975, the CIA was stuck with two of the most expensive and specialized white elephants in maritime history. The Hughes Glomar Explorer and the HMB-1 were too famous to be used for other covert operations and too bizarrely configured for most commercial work. For years, the Glomar Explorer was passed to the U.S. Navy and then mothballed, a sleeping giant bobbing quietly in a California bay, a monument to a secret that had been blown wide open. This is our established fact. The ship eventually found a second life in a role remarkably similar to its original cover story. In the late 1990s, it was sold to a private company and converted into a state-of-the-art, ultra-deepwater oil drilling ship. Renamed the GSF Explorer, the vessel that had once pretended to be a mining platform was now actually one of the most capable deep-sea resource extraction platforms in the world, drilling some of the deepest offshore oil and gas wells ever attempted. You can appreciate the irony. The lie had become the truth. For more than 15 years, the ship worked in oil fields around the globe, its incredible secret past known to only a few. But by 2015, the ship was old, its technology superseded. It was sold for its scrap value and sailed on its final voyage to a shipbreaking yard in China. You can picture it, the once proud vessel being torn apart piece by piece, its steel recycled, its secrets, if any, were welded into its very structure, melted down into oblivion. But the story of its strange sister ship, the submersible barge HMB-1, is even more telling. This is our lesser-known detail, a fascinating epilogue that ties Project Azorian directly into the next generation of military secrets. After its mission was complete, the HMB-1 was not mothballed. It was retained by the U.S. Navy and disappeared back into the black world. In the early 1980s, it reappeared in a new role, one just as secret as its first. The HMB-1 became the floating hangar and transport for the Sea Shadow, a radical experimental stealth ship being developed by Lockheed's Skunk Works. The barge's unique design was perfect for the task. The angular faceted Sea Shadow, which looked like something out of a science fiction film, would be loaded into the HMB-1. The barge's roof would close and it would be towed out to sea. At night, far from prying eyes and Soviet spy satellites, the HMB-1 would submerge, allowing the stealth ship to float out and conduct its secret radar evasion tests. Before dawn, the Sea Shadow would slip back into the submerged barge, which would then surface and be innocuously towed back to port. The vessel designed to hide a stolen Soviet submarine was now hiding America's most advanced, top-secret naval prototype. This fact powerfully demonstrates that the legacy of Azorian was not just a story. Its technology and its very hardware were folded back into the ongoing shadow war of military innovation. The deception never really stopped. It just changed its shape. Both of these incredible machines are now gone. The HMB-1 and the Sea Shadow were scrapped together in 2012. They are relics, ghosts from an era of unchecked black budgets and breathtakingly audacious thinking. They were built with singular purpose, tools designed to pull off a single impossible heist, and their strange careers are a testament to the secret history they embodied. We have now followed this incredible story from a mysterious sinking in the cold Pacific to the shipbreaking yards of China. We have dissected the official report and explored the compelling counter-narrative. We are left at the end of the road with the physical evidence gone and the paper trail obscured. This brings us to our final, lingering critical question. The machines are gone, the men are old or have passed away, and the documents are obscured by black ink. After all this, what is the final truth? What secrets does the ocean still keep at target site Azorian? And will the full unredacted story of this incredible mission ever truly be told? Our journey tonight began with a ghost, a Soviet nuclear submarine that vanished into the silent, crushing darkness of the North Pacific. We followed the frantic, fruitless search of one superpower and the quiet, secret listening of another. We found ourselves inside the most clandestine rooms at the CIA, where an impossible plan was born, a plan to commit the grandest heist in history. You have stood on the docks as a billionaire's gambit gave birth to a leviathan, the Hughes Glomar explorer. You have descended 3 miles into an alien abyss with its mechanical hand, Clementine. You have witnessed the tense high-stakes theater on the ocean surface and the secret, climactic drama that unfolded in the depths below. And now, here at the end, we are left staring at 2 competing realities, 2 stories that are, in their own ways, equally difficult to believe. The sheer audacity of Project Azorian is what defines it. It represents a moment in history, the absolute zenith of Cold War ambition, when paranoia and ingenuity were fueled by a seemingly bottomless black budget. It was an era that believed any technological mountain could be climbed, any secret could be stolen, and any risk was worth taking for an edge in the great game. The mission to raise the K-129 was the ultimate expression of that belief. The first reality is our established fact, the official story. It is a tale of incredible technological achievement marred by a final, tragic flaw. It is a story of a brilliant plan, a daring execution, and a catastrophic mechanical failure at the moment of triumph. In this version, the CIA gets a valuable but secondary prize, the nuclear torpedoes, while the ultimate secrets of the submarine, the codebooks and crypto gear, are lost forever, tumbling back into the darkness. It is a story of hubris, of reaching too far and having the prize break apart in your grasp. It is a story of a partial and deeply frustrating success. The second reality is the counter theory, a narrative of perfect, ruthless competence. In this story, there is no failure. The lift is a flawless success. The entire prize is brought on board, and the CIA gets everything it ever dreamed of. The story of the broken claw is the final brilliant act of the mission itself, a masterful piece of disinformation designed to fool the Soviets to maximize the value of the stolen codes by convincing their enemy that the codes were never stolen at all. It is a story not of failure, but of a success so complete that it had to be hidden behind the mask of failure. This is where the story of Project Azorian passes from history into modern myth, because the truth, in all its unredacted detail, may be permanently unknowable. What secrets still lie on the floor of the Pacific at target site Azorian? The official story tells us that the largest, most valuable section of the submarine is still down there, a ghost of a ghost. The conspiracy theory suggests that the CIA took it all, that the seabed is empty, a cleaned-out tomb. This leads us to one final, lesser-known detail, a theory about the unknown unknowns. The entire operation targeted the forward section of the K-129 because acoustic analysis suggested it was the most intact. But the initial catastrophe that sank the submarine was incredibly violent. What if the vessel broke into not 2 but 3 or more pieces? What other fragments of the submarine, what other secrets might still be scattered across that abyssal plain, miles from the primary wreck site, lost in the silt, never to be found because no one ever knew to look for them? Perhaps the greatest secret the ocean keeps is not the part of the K-129 that was lost, but the parts that were never even found in the first place. The machines built for this incredible mission have been melted down for scrap. Most of the men who carried it out have passed away, taking their secrets with them. The documents that tell the tale are a patchwork of black ink, a puzzle with most of its pieces deliberately missing. We are left in the half-light of speculation, armed with circumstantial evidence and a healthy distrust of official narratives. The story of Project Azorian has become a timeless lesson in the nature of secrecy itself. It demonstrates that some secrets are so vast, so expensive, and so audacious that they can never be fully contained. But it also demonstrates that a secret, when protected by a powerful and well-crafted lie, can become something even more enduring, a permanent mystery. And so we end where we began, staring into an abyss, but we are left with a final lingering question, a choice between 2 impenetrable darknesses. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but governments, when they choose to, keep them even better. In the end, which is the deeper, darker, and more impenetrable abyss, the one at the bottom of the sea, or the one that exists behind the black bars of a redacted government file? Tonight, we've journeyed to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and into the heart of the Cold War as most audacious secret. We've dissected the CIA's incredible mission to steal the Soviet submarine K-129, weighing the official story of a partial failure against the compelling counter-theory of a perfect success hidden behind a masterful lie. From the revolutionary technology of the Glomar explorer to the solemn secret burial at sea, the story of Project Azorian remains a testament to the staggering lengths superpowers would go to gain an edge. In the end, we are left to wonder whether the story of a broken claw was a tragic accident or a brilliant alibi. What do you believe? Your curiosity and your willingness to question the official narrative are what keep these stories alive. You are fellow investigators in the quest for truth, peeling back the layers of history, one redacted file at a time. It's your questioning that ensures these secrets are never truly lost to the depths. That's all for today. Stay curious, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next file.